moving on to social media, and talking about choosing what platforms to be on, which is the top question. It's usually the first thing a client asks me is, what platform should I be on? I've got an account on all of them. And you can be a bit more selective. It really is up to you. Like, if you really want to be on all those platforms and social media is something that you enjoy, go for it, fill your boots. But the process for creating and publishing content on social media, and choosing the right platform for it, is probably quite similar to the marketing process. So again, you might have done that a long time ago. It might be an ongoing thing you do. You might be just doing it now as a startup. But you start off with research, and you define your target market, or market segments, and that in turn informs the creation and packaging of your product or your service. And then finally, you bring it to market. You advertise it, you make it available in the places, real or virtual, where your target will see it and buy it hopefully, or browse it, be aware of it. And it's a very similar process with content marketing, which is effectively what this idea of creating useful content that's not directly selling to people, and publishing that regularly is. You define your audience, that informs the content that you create, and then you publish it where you believe your audience will see it and engage with it, where you think they're most likely to do that. So yeah, basically these stats are just taken from a survey done by a company called Sprout Social. They're a social media marketing company. I believe they offer a sort of social media content scheduling platform, but that's by the by. These stats were gathered earlier this year. I believe it was only about a month ago, so they're fairly well up to date. So on the left-hand side, under each of the platforms, I've listed, the number of monthly active users, the largest age group, the gender divide there. It's a shame that they don't have maybe non-binary. That is a little bit, black and white, but still, we're hopefully making progress in that area. And then finally, the time spent per day, or, an idea of the amount of time that they spend on that platform. This is all really useful information that you can use. Couple it with the work that you've done to define who your ideal customer is, and look at these stats and see if you can, it should give you a picture of whether this platform is right for you or not. On the right hand side there, I've put a couple of, shall we say, preconceptions or kind of cliched ideas that people tend to have about these platforms. Whether they're still true or not is arguable, but then I've kind of followed that up with the bold statement there is something that it's very much my take on what a lesser known fact about these platforms. But yeah, we all know, Facebook is, I hope it doesn't sound too insulting, I don't mean it in a nasty way, lots of mums and aunties on Facebook. The younger generation, Generation Z, tend to steer clear. But what people might not know about it is that there are a lot of really helpful and active business groups, and particularly in Northern Ireland, and for sole traders such as myself, and probably a lot of you as well. Freelance Heroes, off the top of my head, is a really good group. Yeah, and then moving on to Instagram, obviously everybody knows about the influencers, the Insta models, just showing you the highlight reel. But there's actually a lot of content on Instagram at the minute. I don't know whether it's something they're actively promoting to get away from this this sort of superficial conception people have of Instagram, but there's a lot of body positivity and authenticity in the content, particularly in their Reels content that they're pushing out at the minute. So yeah, really interesting evolution of that platform. Twitter, again, we all know its most famous, now banned user, who shall not be named. We know it's quite a noisy political space. It's got a reputation for fake news, but there are some really brilliant examples of storytelling on Twitter. People are using the thread function really brilliantly, and it's one thing that I've always liked about Twitter. I've been on Twitter since I think the year actually was launched, and it is unrecognizable to the platform it was back then, because Twitter observe what its users do, how it uses the platform, and it amends the platform to make it more usable. So things like tweet threads, that's now a function of Twitter. You know, you can create a tweet thread. People just used to reply to their own tweets and sort of hack it. There's lots of other examples that actually escape me right now, but yeah, Twitter is a fantastic platform for conversations, connections, and storytelling, even though it is quite fast paced. Again, LinkedIn, everybody knows it as the sort of, you know, kind of cringy business group. And there's a lot of, you know, saying so-and-so congratulations for being in their job for 10 years and stuff that doesn't really add an awful lot of value. But LinkedIn, to my knowledge, is one of the few platforms that doesn't yet have a Facebook type algorithm. So you'll actually find that you can still, you know, when you put content, you know, you publish a post on LinkedIn, it will still show up in people's feeds up to like a week later. So that helps, you know, basically more people see your content, and that's really, you know, hard to achieve, you know, organically these days. Again, Pinterest, you know, it's, if you're not familiar with it, it's a very visual platform. It is you know, people look on it for kind of aesthetic inspiration, you know, so it probably is known, you know, it's literally as a pin board. You're sort of pinning things to little boards for ideas and inspiration. But what people don't really think about a lot with Pinterest, it is a search engine. It's a really powerful search engine, and your content really, really sticks around. If you put good content on Pinterest, particularly good for, you know, kind of crafting businesses, makers, craftspeople, anything that's, you know, visual, like that. So many, you know, creative businesses can do really well on Pinterest. You will find one piece of content will continue to generate interest, pins, and visits to your website, literally for years. So it's a really underrated platform. And again, TikTok, we all know about, you know, it's lots of young people, a bit of an echo chamber and all the silly dances, but there's a lot of really, really high quality educational content on TikTok, which I think is a growth area there at the minute. So definitely worth considering if you have any sort of educational or teaching content you want to share. There we go. And again, that's just some really simple tips about, you know, all of your content, really, really, you know, fairly basic stuff. But it is important to, you know, to check your spelling and grammar if you have the time to. You know, Word and most kind of typewriting, you know, packages have an inbuilt spell checker. Grammarly is a really useful app and tool, because you can set it up on your computer and it will actually spell check content that you type into social media. One of the best pieces of content or advice I can give to you with any kind of content, particularly that long form, you know, chunky content, if it's written content, is get a second pair of eyes on it, and particularly someone outside of your industry. Because again, it is so easy, I've done it myself, to use, you know, terms, acronyms, you know, shortened forms of words, and forget to explain them, or just assume that everybody knows what that means. So having somebody outside your industry is a really good idea to check your content. Reading it out loud is an underrated trick for making sure that your content actually makes sense. It's the best way to find if you're missing punctuation. And, you know, again, if it actually makes sense. It's so easy to miss a word here or there, and you only notice it when you actually physically read it out to yourself. And then again, just simply how the writing actually looks on the page, just simple stuff, font, spacing, layout. Is there enough space? Does it look crowded? You know, is it comfortable on the eye?